Hey guys, Lainey here at Drum Percussion Studio. So, today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about double strokes. If you haven't checked out the first video that I did on double strokes, go check that out. It talks a little bit about how to play a double stroke correctly, and there are some basic exercises to get you started. This video is going to give you some additional exercises if you've already mastered everything in that last video. So make sure you go check that out and you work on those things before you try to tackle some of the concepts in this video. So here's what we're going to be doing today to apply some more of the double stroke technique. We are going to look at application within paradiddles, within stick control, and then I'm going to give you an additional exercise that works on your diddles called chicken and a roll. So that's kind of our outline for this video. So again, if you haven't watched the other video on double strokes, please go check that out. Make sure that you've got that double stroke technique mastered before you try and come to do some of this other stuff, okay? So here's what we're going to do first. I want to jump into paradiddles first and foremost, okay? Paradiddles are probably the most important rudiment, I would say, that we have as percussionists. Again, paradiddles are just like double strokes. They can be applied to marimba, to drum set, to hand drumming. They have all kinds of application. And they're one of my favorite things to play, to be completely honest. A lot of times I like to just put on music that I'm really hip to, whatever is playing constantly on my Spotify. What I'll do is I'll just throw that on and I'll just play paradiddles with it. Just because it changes things up. You're not just playing everything on one hand. It keeps your hands even. So I really dig paradiddles. So let's break down a paradiddle, right? At its core, a paradiddle is a single and then a double stroke. So you have to have some kind of understanding of how to make a double stroke work in order to play a paradiddle. Now, a lot of times students come in and they have played paradiddles where they're stroking out that double stroke at the end. Hopefully you can see that I'm using only wrist for that double stroke, okay? Now, the faster that you get with your paradiddles, the harder it is going to be to stroke everything out. So this is where that double stroke technique that we talked about in the last video is going to really, really be important. Now, some things to think about when you're playing paradiddles. The first thing, you've got to make sure that you relax, especially when you start to increase the tempo on those double strokes. If you start to tense up, then your hands and your arm will not be able to do what they need to do. The second thing you need to remember is that your wrist and your fingers have to work together. It's a team effort. We talked about this motion in the last video. So make sure that you are relaxing and that you are using both implements of your hand equally. They cannot do this by themselves. They have to have each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our paradiddles. We've got an accent on the first beat. And we're going to start at quarter note equals 80. I am going to go ahead and put 16th notes on the metronome. Now, this is a great practice strategy to use, especially when you're trying to make sure that your rhythm, your subdivision, is consistent, okay? Obviously, the goal being you want everything to line up so that you can't hear the metronome at all, all right? All right, so we've got metronome on 16th notes, and we're just going to play through some paradiddles. And 1, 2, ready, and stop. If you look up here on the board, you'll see I've literally just got a measure of 16th notes with those paradiddles added. Now, let's go ahead and break it down so that you can see the single and the double. With the single, I'm going to use just my wrist, right? 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. The double stroke is where the fingers are really going to get involved, okay? 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. That's one great way to do it. Just break it down by the single and the double. Playing it with the met. If you're playing the single, it's going to be on 1 and E. 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E. If you're playing the double, it's going to be on the and a. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 2 E and a, and a, and. That's a fun little thing to do, okay? Making sure that those double strokes are not crushed together and kind of has a little hip groove to it. Okay, so, excuse me. Well, we're playing the paradiddles. Now we're going to put those two together, okay? Now, if you're struggling with understanding where to put the double stroke technique and where to use the wrist, a great thing to do is to play on two different surfaces or to isolate your hands. So the thing that I like to do first is to play one hand on my leg and one on the pad or one on the drum, just so that I can see if all of the notes are lining up where they're supposed to go. So I'm going to play with my right hand on the pad and my left hand on my leg. Here we go. 1, 2, and paradiddles, paradiddle, paradiddle, paradiddle. Okay, now I'm going to switch. 1, 2, go. Need to start on the right hand too. Here I go. Okay, now, isolating your hands may show you that the tendency is to play either the first note of the double stroke or the second note accented. So this is a really, really great exercise to do in order to see how your hands are doing in terms of that consistent sound. We talked about that in the last video, right? Making sure that the volume is the same for both notes. Now, the other thing that you want to think about with the E's on the paradiddle, right? The only note that is on the opposite hand, you need to make sure that you're placing that exactly where it needs to go, okay? So, here's what I want you to work on with the paradiddles, okay? Making sure that you can play them just non-stop, okay? Again, practicing with a recording is a great way to do that. And then also isolating the hands, playing just on legs, or one hand on the leg, one hand on the drum, okay? I'm going to go ahead and play some paradiddles for you on the snare drum so you can hear the difference. A lot of times it's a lot easier to play on a pad than it is on a drum. They feel completely different. So make sure that if you have access to a drum, you're going and you're practicing on the drum as well, okay? All right, so here we go. I'm going to play this exercise. I'm just going to do it twice. Super easy. And I just want you to see, hopefully you can see my fingers being engaged on that double stroke at the end of the paradiddle. 2, here I go. So, easiest way to apply some of these double stroke concepts. Go through some paradiddles. Check out Vic Firth's website. They have a ton of play-along videos. If this is too slow, if this is too fast, I guarantee that they have some stuff on their website about playing paradiddles. You can watch another video if you want more information about how to play those, things like that. So, check out some paradiddles to work on those double strokes. Now, this is my favorite thing to work on with double strokes, is stick control. Now, a lot of you that I have worked with will probably recognize this book. I bring it out usually at some point, and specifically, I bring out this page, page number 5. So, page number 5 works on stick control, and I've written it out right here so that you can see a little bit better what is on that page. Now, obviously, I was only able to write in 3 variations. So, if you want a copy of page 5, shoot me an email, let me know, and I'll see if I can scan you a copy so that you can practice different permutations. But what I've got written down right here, we're going to be playing in cut time. Okay, I wrote it as 8th notes, but you're going to count it as 16th notes. 1 and 2 E and Okay. Now, here's how this is going to work. Number 1 is going to be your check pattern. Okay, that's just hands single alternating back and forth, right, left, 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 etc. Numbers 2 and 3 are going to be where you use the double stroke, right, left, left, right, left, left, and then number 3 would be left, right, right, left, left, right, right. Okay, so I'm going to play through this for you. Now, here's what I want you to do when you're practicing. Always go back to number 1 because number 1 is your check pattern. Number 1 is where you see how the rhythm is supposed to sound. Because remember, when we're playing double strokes, we want the rhythm to be consistent, right? You don't want to be crushing it or putting too much space in between the notes. So, using number 1 as your check pattern and going in between the double variations, going back to that will get it back in your ear and help you to understand exactly how it's supposed to sound. Playing with a metronome also helps, but going back to number 1 is kind of a fail-safe. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play number 1. I'm going to play it off the right and the left. Then I'm going to play number 2 2 times. Then I'm going to go back to number 1 off the right and left. And then I'm going to play number 3. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. here's number 2. Back to number 1. Hopefully you can see that I'm using my wrist for number 1. Here's number 3. Now, I forgot to mention, whenever you are playing some of these variations off the left hand, you'll have to play half of number 1, just so that you can get started on the left hand, instead of trying to do 3 left hands in a row or something silly like that. So, I actually ended up playing those 4 times each, but I feel like that gives you a little bit of a better idea. So, when you're practicing this, just making sure that you go back to that 1, just so that you, again, you have a check pattern and you can hear that. I think you'll be able to hear it a little bit better when I play through it on the snare drum. Again, talking about the difference between a practice pad and a snare drum, it's going to be a lot easier to play it on a practice pad. So if you can play it on a practice pad, that's great, but make sure that you can also play it on the drum, because it's going to be a little bit different. Not quite as much rebound. All right, here we go. So I'm going to do them 4 times each, starting with number 1. 1, 2, here I go. So, the goal being, you want everything to sound like number 1. This is another great exercise to bring somebody in, have them close their eyes or turn away from you, and see if they can tell the difference from when you're playing double strokes and single strokes. This is a warm-up that I use all the time. So if you've ever come by the studio and I've been in a room practicing, that's probably something that you would hear me play. It is part of my snare drumming practice regimen, right? So make sure you check that out. Okay, last thing I want to talk about in this second double stroke video is an exercise that's really going to continue to build these double strokes. And this is going to kind of tie into the video that I have on 16th note grid. So if this is your jam, then definitely check out the videos on 16th note grid applications. Basically, what I do in those videos is I talk about how to take the 16th note grid as a template and then use it for double strokes. So be sure to check that out whenever you are practicing. All right, so here's how chicken and a roll is going to work. It's essentially straight 16th notes, right? That's what you're going to be playing the entire time. And then these dashes that I've notated here, those are going to be double strokes, okay? Now, going back to what we talked about in the last video, those dashes do not mean to play crushed double strokes. They need to be even. They need to sound like 32nd notes that you're playing as a single stroke kind of thing, going back to that stick control thing that we just talked about. So make sure that everything is super even. Now, the other thing to remember, or excuse me, the other thing that's important about this exercise, he's written in some accents. I'm assuming it's a he. He's written in some accents in the second half of the exercise. Whenever you're using those accents, you're going to see I'm going to be playing at about, I don't know, 3 inches off the head. For my unaccented notes, my accented are going to be all the way up at 12. Okay, so make sure that you are really making those accents pop so that they're a little bit differentiated from the rest of the exercise. So I'll go ahead and play through this for you, and then we'll break it down just a fuzz. I'm going to be at quarter note equals 80. Again, nice and slow, just to make sure that I've got my fingers engaged, and I'm also using my wrist. Here we go, chicken and a roll. 1, 2. Here we go. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 2 E and a 3 E and a 1. There you go. So, breaking this down. If I were you, I would probably practice just this A section first. Then I would add on the B section with the accents. You will find when you're practicing through this that it's a lot harder to get those accents to speak whenever you've got the double strokes coming right after that. So I would isolate it, just work on letter A. You'll notice it's kind of like a theme in variations, right? Letter A is kind of setting the tone, and then letter B is a variation where we're adding in that accent. So make sure that letter A sounds really, really nice. The other thing, don't be afraid to slow it down. Whenever you're working on this for the first time, bump it down to 60. This is at 65. just so that you can make sure that your fingers are really engaged and they're really working together. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and... That's just the A section, right? And I think hopefully you can see my fingers really getting involved. The slower you go, the more those fingers are really going to be able to help. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1, 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and stop. Okay? So, don't be afraid to slow it down. Again, slow practice, fast progress. So, the more you practice slow, the better off you're going to be in the long run. Okay, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play this whole exercise for you on the snare drum, again, just so you can hear the difference. And, yeah, then we'll be done. Here we go. Chicken in a roll. I'm going to bump it back up to quarter equals 80. 1, 2, ready, play. So, that was chicken in a roll. Again, really working on 9-stroke rolls in this one. And then you've got, I guess that's a 16-stroke roll there at the end. So, be sure to check out chicken in a roll and continue working on those double strokes. Thanks for stopping by.